Okay, so when I bought this 899, the bottom of the stanchion on this side is actually broken where the mudguard is meant to mount. So I've bought a new stanchion here. This is the bit that's sheared off, so I guess the bike's been chucked down the road at some point in its track life. But my mission now is to essentially swap this stanchion out for the stanchion that's on the bike. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to do a fork seal change. So the first thing I need to do, front wheel off, mudguard off, release the clamps top and bottom on the fork and drop this side fork out. I'm going to work on this side fork first because it's a broken one. I will change the seals on the other side as well to match, so they're both refreshed at the same time. But I'll go ahead and do that, get that fork off, and then we'll walk through the process of actually tearing that fork down and changing the stanchion, changing the fork seals and re-oiling it. Okay, so that is the fork off the bike. And you'll see my bodge of a fix to hold the mudguard on with some riv nuts and a piece of a plate versus the cast that's meant to be on there. So the next thing is to start separating the fork. So to do that, I've got soft jaws on my vise so I don't damage the fork. I'm just going to hold it in the vise. First thing we have to do is wind off the preload and then remove the top cap. So I'm going to get my tool back off the preload so there is none, and then take this off, and then I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so having undone the top plunger cap, we can now unscrew the body and pull it down, revealing the innards of the fork. And then we have to remove the cap from the top of the stanchion, so you need this special tool. They're available on eBay, you can buy them from Ducati. They slide in and go in the top of the nut that's actually holding everything in place. That nut is extremely tight, so I'm going to use an extension on my wrench and just undo that. Okay, so now that's released, we can slide out the upper spring assembly and damper from the fork. I've put on some rag so it stays clean. Okay, so next we need to remove the upper spacer, the spring, and the lower spacer. I'm going to use this grabbing tool to do that, hopefully. So there's the upper spacer. So that didn't work for removing the spring, but this piece of welding filler wire hopefully will be enough to reach down and hook the spring out. Which, yes, it is. So that's the spring. Put that in my oily bowl. I'm just going to pour the oil out of here to make life easier. That was a pretty effective way of getting it out. Okay, so now it's time to remove the dust gasket from the outer. So I'm going to use this scraper and just get between the dust gasket and the outer body and slide that up. And next we have to remove the snap ring that you can see in there, and that will let us remove the stanchion. So I'm just going to do, now that the snap ring's removed, take great care in removing it so you don't damage the stanchion itself. These ends could easily dig in and scratch the stanchion. Once that's removed, I'm just going to nip up the vise and then just slide this out against sliding bushes. Okay, and after a bit more sliding and hitting against, the two parts are separated, so my stanchion is now separate of my upper fork body. So I'm going to place that to one side, take this out of the vise and put that in my oil bath. And now I'm just going to clean up and get the parts clean, and then go about fitting the new stanchion on this side with new bushers and show you how we get, sorry, not new bushers, new valve fork seals, show you how we get those in place and put it back together. So this is now my new stanchion. I'm going to remove all these parts from the top. So my sliding bushers, upper, lower, and then the seals. I'm doing that so that I can then actually get my new seals in place. So all of this has to come off first. So to get the upper sliding bush off, we need to spread it slightly. Lower bush comes off easily. Next up, seal top, the seal itself, and the dust seal. Okay, so when you've cleaned everything up, you need to refit the two bushings that you took off, the new seals and dust seal, and obviously the retaining clip and this washer that acts as the top of the seal. We then need to reinsert the stanchion into the fork body, and make sure that when we do that, our bushings sit in the right place. So the small bushing is easy, that goes in straight away. The larger bushing is going to be harder to get in, and we're going to need to push that into place. So to get the seal and the larger bush back in place, there is a special tool that you can put around the stanchion here and then push the seal in place. What I've done is cut my old seal so that I can put it around the stanchion, bend it back into shape, and then I can seat that on top of the new seal and gently tap that down. So I've been gently just doing, be very careful not to damage the stanchion at this point, and just tap that into place. That will get you the depth that you require. Because that's split, you can then use a little screwdriver just to flick that back out. Obviously don't scratch anything while you're in here doing this. Be very careful. Everything's oily, so it's easier to make a mistake. But that will then come back out, and you can bend it back off. That's now properly seated the seal, which means that I can put this retaining clip in easily, slide that down into place, and you can hear that click home properly. That has clicked home all the way around, so that's perfect. And now I can slide the dust seal back over. I'm sliding the dust seal over, simply pull the dust seal from the top and push that into place. And there we have replaced the dust seals and the main seals in the forks. So now I have to spin the forks over, clamp it by the base, and then we can start putting our components back in the top. So we have to start with the bottom spacer, then the spring, the top spacer, and then the damper unit. Okay, so that's the bottom spacer in, spring is going in, and then the top spacer in. And now for the damper. Before we put that in, we need to put oil in. So it needs 563 cc of fork oil. I'm using this fork oil, so I'll go ahead and fill the fork up now. Okay, so my camera went flat, so the eager-eyed amongst you will notice this is not the same fork. I am now on the other fork. First one's complete. I've got to the same stage as I left off, so we now have to insert the damper. Just push that gradually down through the oil, and then we use our tool to lock this in place again. So it just needed that bit of downward pressure on that to get that to catch the threads, and then once it's caught, you can just wind that on. Now these were very tight when I took them off. Use the same extension bar that I used to undo them to do them up. Okay. Tool off, and now we can lift the outer fork body up and start threading that onto the plunger cap. At this point I will change how to set up, clamp the fork body in the vise. Like so. And then do the plunger cap up. There is a special tool for this. I don't have it, so I'm using an adjustable spanner, as you can see. Now, my vise doesn't hold these forks very well, so that's as tight as I'm going to get it. I'll put it on the bike and actually tighten it against the clamps, so once it's clamped in place I can get a little bit more tightness on the caps. So fitting the forks back on the bike is very much the reverse of taking them off the bike. We need to slide them up through clamps. Make sure that the bars go back on, obviously. And then push them up into the top clamp. So in most cases you'll be aiming to get the same height at which you remove them. In my case I'm aiming to get the height a little bit different because I actually want a bit more clearance on the front. I noticed that my 899 is very low at the front compared to my brother's 899, so I'm just going to give it a little bit more clearance, so have it slightly lower in the top clamp before I bolt it up.